Hello, I'm Radhika and here's my magic card. Hi everyone, we're presenting two major real-world cyber incidents, the StarHub DNS DDoS attack in 2016 and the WannaCry crypto worm outbreak in 2017. We'll start with StarHub, where insecure home IoT devices took down ISP's DNS, and later my teammates will cover WannaCry. StarHub faced a DNS DDoS driven attack by home routers, affecting 250K users across two outrages. Instead of massive bandwidth, the attackers used extremely high rate DNS queries from infected local IoT devices. Thousands of infected IoT devices hammered Starbucks' recursive DNS servers with automated queries. Since those DNS servers were a single choke point, they quickly overloaded, causing widespread DNS failure. StarHub attempted to edge filtering, but the sheer number of unique source IPs made it nearly impossible to block the traffic effectively. The system failed due to architectural gaps, a single DNS tier, weak rate limits, and limited anacast spread. So when the high QPS surge hit, there wasn't enough redundancy to absorb it. Users faced intermittent access and DNS timeouts, but only home broadband was affected. Enterprise and mobile stayed normal. Each outrage was fixed within 2 hours, highlighting how dependent home users are on single recursive DNS tier. To illustrate how a Mirai style infection leads to this kind of DNS flood, we built a safe Python simulation. The stimulation begins with scanning. We generate 1,000 IoT devices with normal DNS traffic capped at 900 QPS and a system limit of 1200 QPS. The bot probes common admin ports like 23 and 80 in batches. A portion of devices were found WAN exposed, similar to the misconfigured home routers in StarHub attack. These became the attacker's entry point, and their public IPs are shown. Next is online guessing. Any device still using default credentials is immediately hijacked, mirroring how our Mirai spread across simple password reusage rather than exploits.
Thank you, Radhika, and hello, I'm Kovan Chu, and this is my magic card. Firstly, the simulation goes by phases. On phase 0, a normal day where the legit traffic is at 900 QPS and all queries are served and not dropped. Phase 1 is when the botnet activates and a gradual QPS shoots up, with the recursive DNS beginning to fail with serve fail. Phase 2 is the show overload. The traffic from the bots is approximately 540 QPS, which gave a total of 1,440 QPS in traffic, but only about 1,200 queries were served, and 240 QPS of queries dropped, causing users to see timeout. Finally, with scrubbing, there are still incoming traffic from the bots, but are filtered away, so none of the legitimate queries are dropped. Scaling then tripled the capacity to 3,600 QPS. Both stabilize the attack while the attack still happens in the background. So the simulation demonstrates the same exact chain: insecure IoT, growing botnet, DNS flood, overload, and eventual recovery. Now, this is the important procedures that StarHub took to curb the DDoS attack. First, StarHub has to scrub the traffic by identifying the possible hijacked IoT devices and drop the DNS queries from them, while allowing legitimate ones to pass through. StarHub also increased the DNS capacity using resolvers and anycast so that the same DNS IP was served by multiple sites at once, reducing congestion. Next, these are the important lessons learned, which I have closely related to whatever was taught in the lecture. First, no more default credentials. Many of the hijacked devices will due to the factory logins using defaults for convenience sake. Sorting and hashing of passwords still matters for stored password, but it doesn't stop the brute force of online guessing. Second, remove one exposure. Mirai only works if the admin page is reachable from the internet. Turn remote admin off to disable UPnP auto port opening and ditch legacy admin ports by upgrading it. Lastly, add client authentication. With mutual TLS or client certificates, anonymous scanners immediately fail the handshake, so logged in prompt will never even appear to the attacker in the first place. Thank you.
Evaluate visual action. In May 2017, WannaCry became the first crypto worm to spread across the internet at scale, infecting over 300,000 systems in more than 100 countries in just hours. Major organizations and critical infrastructure were hit. 80 NHS hospital trusts in the UK were disrupted. Spain's telecom and energy companies were affected. FedEx experienced outages and Renault had to halt factory production. The attack was a massive global failure in patch management. The attack demanded Bitcoin ransom, but its state-grade tool suggested both financial and geopolitical intent. Technically, WannaCry exploited MS-17 over no critical RCE flaws in the outdated SMB v1 protocol, allowing attackers to remotely execute code on any unpatched Windows system. The core weakness was in the SMB v1's handling of the SMB COM transaction requests. It failed to validate buffer lengths and parameter offsets, allowing crafted packets to trigger a heap overflow in the Windows kernel memory. This gave attackers unauthenticated remote code execution access. Eternal Blue, an NSA-grade exploit leaked by the shadow brokers, turned this flaw into a highly reliable wormable attack. A key stage was leaking kernel memory via SMBv1 to bypass ASLR by revealing real kernel addresses. With ASLR defeated, Eternal Blue could precisely target memory, making exploitation extremely stable across millions of such devices.
Hi, my name is Mingjie, and this is my memory card. In kernel memory leak, the exploit first abused SMBv1 to leak kernel memory addresses. This effectively bypassed the address-based layout randomization, ASLR, a defense mechanism that randomizes memory locations. Kernel pool grooming. It then groomed the kernel memory pool by sending crafted SMP packets. This shaped memory structures so that the overflow would land predictably and reliably. Finally, the corrupted SMB buffer allowed arbitrary pointer writes, overwriting function pointers and giving the attacker kernel mode arbitrary code execution access. Since SMBv1 was enabled by default, every unpatched machine became an immediate target with zero user involvement. WannaCry followed a clear cyber kill chain. In record and delivery, rapid scanning of public IP addresses for the SMB port TCP/445, directly delivering malicious SMB packets. For weaponization, the worms combined Eternal Blue and a double pulsar kernel mode backdoor, and the ransomware payload MSSEC svc.exe. For exploitation and installation, the Eternal Blue enabled RCE. Double pulsar provided persistent loading and functioned as a covert C2 channel. Actions on the objective. The payload was deployed, encrypting files using hybrid AES RSA and deleting volume shadow copies to prevent easy recovery. The worms immediately scanned for new hosts, enabling autonomous lateral propagation. Now for the demo.
I start by setting my R host the target and my L host the machine receiving the reverse shell. With the exploit and payload created, I launch Eternal Blue, the same memory corruption flaw WannaCry used. It overflows the kernel buffer, rewrites function pointers, and gives me remote code execution. Once I'm in, I upload my encryption payload. WannaCry used AES 128 for files and RSA 2048 for the AES keys. This uses a stronger AES 256 design with key stretching and HMAC. I run the file. I run it, the file is encrypted and deleted, and I remove the payload, showing a controlled modernized version of the attack. Attribution to the Lazarus group was supported by multiple technical clues. WannaCry shared unique code with the Sony Pictures attack in the Bangladesh bank heist, including encryption routines. Early samples also connected to command and control servers previously used by Lazarus. Finally, the combined use of Eternal Blue and exploitation and double pulsar for persistence matched the sophisticated state-backed tactics. Immediate response: a researcher's sinkhole, the hard-coded kill switch domain, which stopped the initial worm's variant spread. Organizations urgently applied the MS-17 patch, and Microsoft released emergency releases for end-of-life systems. TCP port 445 was blocked at the perimeter and internally.
Architectural fixes were implemented. SMB v1 deprecation became mandatory. We saw the push for zero-trust architecture and microsegmentation to contain lateral movement, and mandatory accelerated patching for critical vulnerabilities became a policy. Finally, long-term resilience was also improved. The need for robust offline backups and enhanced EDR to detect TTPs like shadow copy deletion was solidified. In summary, WannaCry was not just a ransomware attack. It was a global lesson in patch management, network hygiene, and the threats posed by the uncontrolled proliferation of offensive cyber tools. Thank you.